Hello, this is John from caveofprogramming.com. In this tutorial, we're going to look at creating beans through factory methods in Spring. So if we go to this beans.xml, look at the beans tab here and select a bean, we can see that there's still some of these fields that we haven't explored. And in this tutorial, we're going to look at the factory bean and factory method fields, which I'm going to clear to start with because I had those filled in from a little test that I did just now. So at the moment we're creating person beans through constructors. So if we look at the source of this XML file, we see that we're creating a bean using the normal constructor and we're supplying some arguments to the constructor. But sometimes you want to create beans using a built-in factory method for some reason. Of course, this is quite a common thing to do in Java. For example, in Swing, you might want to create a border object using a factory method of a border factory or something like that. I'm sure you can think of many other examples. So let's go to, let's first look at app.java, because at the moment I'm creating just one bean and I'm getting one bean from the container. Two beans, sorry. I think these are singletons now. We'll get one bean from the container like this, and later on I'll output it so that we can see something happening. I'll set a property of it, I'll leave that in there. So we've just got a very simple main program now, and to keep things simple I'll also just check that I'm going to set this to the default value of singleton. So we've now got a simple program that just creates one bean. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to person.java and I'm going to give this a factory method. So let's give it a method, public static, and the static is important here, person get instance. So again, the name is not important, it's just that it's traditional to give factory methods a name like get instance in this kind of a case, this kind of scenario. But it could be called, like in border factory, you'd have maybe create etched border or something like that. So some sort of a method which is static and it returns a instance of the object that you want to create. So this class now has a factory method that returns an instance of itself for some reason. Maybe it needs to do some complicated configuration in here or something. It doesn't matter. We can tell the XML to use this factory method to construct this person bean instead of the constructor quite easily. And all we have to do is, let's go to the beans.xml. Well, actually first, let's put a sysout in here because I want to prove to you that this is running. And let's say creating person using factory method. So I'll save that. And let's apply some dummy parameters to the constructor just for the moment. Let's give it, I'll use this version of the constructor in the factory method, and I'll supply an ID of, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, and a name of Bob. Okay, that's good. And we'll go to beans.xml now. And again, I'll use the GUI interface version of this. I'll click on this beans tab. And for factory method here, I'm now going to type the name of that method, which was get instance, and save it. So I don't need the brackets on there. And if we look at the source now, we'll see that it's added this factory-method attribute to the bean XML opening tag. So it's very, very simple. If I run this, I'm going to get an error, and you'll maybe see why. So I'll run that, and here's an error. And it's telling me, if I look closely at the top significant line of that error, no matching factory method found. Get instance. Check that a method with a specified name exists and arguments exist, and that it is static. So the problem here is that although I've got a method with the right name and it is static, it doesn't take the arguments that I said the constructor should take in this beans.xml. And so these constructor arguments now are going to be arguments to the factory method. Let's just cut these for the moment. So I'll do Control X to cut and run this. And now we see that it runs fine and it says creating person using factory method. So now I'm using my factory method instead of the constructor. Let's paste these back in again. To get the constructor arguments to work is of course very simple. I just need to allow my factory method here to take the right arguments, the arguments that I specify in the XML. So let's say here int ID and string name. And notice that my person was constructed with the name Bob and the ID 1234, just as I've specified here. You can see that down here if you've got good eyesight. But now let's make this take ID and name from this getInstance method. And now if I run it, then let's select app.java and run. Now we're creating a bean, again using the constructor arguments, but this time supplied to this factory method. And we're running this code here. So that's a factory method. It's pretty simple, just using the factory-method attribute. Another thing that you can do, which is often useful, is you can even have a whole class, a factory class that creates your beans. And again, that's very simple. I'll leave this here because I want to make this source code available to you so you can take a look at this example, and I'll copy it so that we can change a second bean definition and do something different with it. Let's call this person2 for an ID and save that. And if I run this now, we're creating two people now, and I can change these arguments if I want. Let's change this to 654 with a name of Mike. So if I save this and run it, we can see that here I've created a person with the name Mike and the ID 654, as well as the original Mary and 777. And this output is just coming from my factory method now, I think. No, it's not actually. I've got person created. Wow, I'm not completely sure where it's coming from, if I'm honest. Let's see. Oh yeah, we've got an onCreate method, that's the thing, so it's coming from here. Okay, well anyway, we've got the debug output we need, so that's great. We're creating two person beans now. And now what I can do is I can create a factory class. So I'm just going to right click here and go to new class, and I'll call this person factory. Click finish. And now I'll give this a method, public void person, create person. And let's because we've got arguments to the constructor, let's allow this to take an int ID and a string name. And if we didn't have constructor arguments, then I wouldn't have any arguments here either. And let's say return new person ID name, like that. And I'll put this out in here for debug purposes again. And I'll say using factory to create person. Yeah, that'll do actually. Using factory to create person. Now, if I want to use this to create a bean, again, it's very simple. I go to my beans.xml. Let's go to the user interface beans tab. And now let's select this person2 bean. And for this, I will specify the factory method as create person and the factory bean as person factory, like that. And now the next step here, the last step, is I need to create a bean for this person factory itself, which I'll give this, I think this has to be the ID. So let's go to the XML. Well, I'm in the XML already. In fact, I'll just do it here. Let's say new bean, and I'll give it an ID of person factory, and I'll leave the name out for the moment. I'll just type person factory for the class, person factory, and click browse, and select my person factory class and click finish. So yeah, it's picked up the ID to display it here, which is good. I'll save it. And so now I'm saying that for my second person bean, it should be created using the person factory bean, which is this, and the person factory bean must have a method called createPerson. And if we look at personFactory.java, there's that method. So now if I run this program now, fingers crossed, let's select app and click run. Now we're creating a person using the factory, so it says using factory to create person, and you see we've created a person as before called Mike. So that's all for factory methods and beans. It's pretty simple. One little thing to notice is that the createPerson method here in your factory is not static. If I make it static and I run my program, actually I've got to put static in the right place at first. So public static person, and then run it. Select app.java run. I get an error and it complains that the method is not static somewhere. So here, no matching factory method found. Check that a method with the specified name and arguments exists and that it is non-static. So for reasons that I don't completely understand, if you have a factory, the method must be non-static. If you have a factory method in the bean itself, then of course then it must be static, naturally. Okay, so I think that's everything for this tutorial. And again, yeah, I should show you the raw XML very quickly here, so you can see that the factory that you use is specified as here as a factory-bean attribute. So again, if you want to type this yourself, it's very, very simple. And I'd strongly encourage you, if you want to remember this stuff, to type it out yourself and to create simple Spring programs and to try out all the stuff that I'm telling you, because it's very hard to remember this stuff just by watching a video. But you can see it's pretty simple stuff. As long as you're familiar with factories in Java, the factory design pattern, it's dead simple. And if you need more information about Java design patterns, then I've got a free course on Java design patterns, which you can find via caveofprogramming.com. So you can always check that out. But this is just standard Java, apart from the Spring Bean configuration stuff to say what factory method to use and what class to find it in if necessary. Okay, so until next time, happy coding.